What's up, everybody? Welcome back to yet another episode of On the Record, the Fat Records fan podcast, where we're going album by album, side by side, and roughly chronologically through the whole catalog. I'm one of your hosts, Alex, joined by Ben and Josh. What's going on, guys?
Greetings, buddy.
Hey, how you doing?
We are here today to talk about one of the best records this label has ever put out, in my opinion. So you can definitely. I'm not gonna hide the fact that I absolutely love this record.
Right.
This is Strung Out's Twisted by Design. It is just, and I mean, it's the musicianship alone is just incredible on this record.
Yeah.
And so today we're going to be talking about the remastered version, which, when we talked about Suburban Teenage Wasteland Blues, which is actually, that's my favorite Strung Out record, but this is a close second. I did not really care for the remaster on that one.
No, I didn't either.
I feel the complete opposite about this one. I think the remaster on this one is incredible.
It does nothing but add like a lot of little flourishes that you don't notice on the original version. I feel like,
Yeah.
it makes the whole record kind of breathes a lot better than it did before.
Yeah, I picked up on that too because I took. Before I continue with my ridiculous praise, Ben, what's your background with this record? When did you first listen to it?
High school. I think summer before junior year, maybe. I don't know. It was the first Strung Out album I actually purchased.
I think it was mine too.
I think it might have also been mine.
I got it at a Best Buy in Parma, Ohio.
Wow, you remember the store? Dang,
dude. Yeah, it was a nice. We used to go to every Saturday. We'd hit like Best Buy, like the used record store, and like a whole bunch of like random shops in this one area in Parma. So that was always on the agenda.
Nice. I want to say I got mine from Circle CD. I think I did. It's a tiny little independent record store, right, not too far from where Ben lives.
Yeah, they closed like I think during our senior year, right?
Yeah, that sounds right to me. If not then like shortly after.
Yeah.
But despite not working on this record, the remaster of Twisted by Design was handled by Ryan Green, and I have to say he really did a fantastic job here.
Yeah.
Before we get into the record, let's talk about the liner notes. Twisted by Design was released on May 5th, 1998. The band lineup was Jason Cruz on vocals, Jake Kiley on guitar, Rob Ramos also guitar, Jim Cherry on bass, and Jordan Burns on drums. It was recorded at Rumbo Recorders in Woodland Hills, California, mixed at Master Control in Burbank, California, and engineered and produced by Ulrich Wild. So Ulrich Wild has an interesting resume. I was looking through some of the other people he's recorded, and it's pretty varied. He's got credits with Alice in Chains, Fishbone, Sting, Cheap Trick, White Zombie, and Deftones. So it's quite a range that this guy has.
It's like when the Bouncing Souls recorded with Tom Wilson, who's like known for a lot of huge like old metal and rock records. He recorded like a bunch of Kiss albums.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when they were tracking, I want to say it was Hopeless Romantic, maybe. I forget which one Tom Wilson did, but the in the documentary they talk about how there's days of like the Souls all sitting in the control room listening to like rough mixes of the album, and Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley are like sitting in there listening with them, and they're like, "Hey, it sounds pretty good." He's like, "You guys are Kiss. What the fuck are you talking about?"
What?
It's very. I can only feeling, or I feel like imagining those two groups hanging out is just has to be very surreal to me.
Yeah, that's a weird overlap. Also, if it was Hopeless Romantic, that's unfortunate that that's the one that they had that audience for. Not the greatest Souls record. But anyway, beyond that, and then Master Control, where this record was mixed initially, was a studio that I guess recorded other bands like the Pixies, Dinosaur Jr., Vandals, Devo, and Madonna. So
Oh wow.
I just thought that was it was interesting that they made they we're so used to seeing Ryan Green attached to everything at this point
Absolutely.
that I had to take a look and see Strung Out, like why they might have gone elsewhere, and I think they made the right choice. I don't think going back to Ryan Green was going to do them any favors a second time around.
No.
And before we start talking about the record, I also want to talk about the album art, which, as always, is Jason Cruz's work, and it is just such a strange piece of artwork. Like all of their records are really interesting artwork, but this one in particular is really unsettling. It's got that like sinister looking cherubic doll face with like this like blaze of blown out red hair and a giant like cockroach or something sitting right on top of its face.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
I thought that the cockroach was like
Its hair.
the actual hair of the doll,
Right.
and then like it had like a red wig on top of it.
Yeah, I also thought that for a really long time, and then one day I took a closer look and I was like, oh god.
Does this not look like it should be a record for a ska band? A
It- it-
album art for a ska band.
You know what it
Like
is?
that
It's
logo.
The font. It's the font.
Yeah.
It's the font. It is, and
the font definitely screams like bowling T-shirts and
Yes.
stuff like
Yes.
that. Like,
Yeah.
1000%.
it's just not a great, like real 2.5 Men vibes. I don't like it.
Shots fired. Oh boy. Yeah, it's not. I don't love the typeface. But and
No, it looks like it should be on a fucking Social Distortion record.
Yeah, and that
That's not a good thing, by the way.
Corkboard texture underneath the word strung also is just like a weird choice. But the artwork itself, really interesting.
Yeah.
And definitely twisted. All right. Well, let's start talking about this thing. And of course, we are going to start with Too Close to See, which is an incredible opening track. It's one of the very best.
Oh, it's perfect.
It's, for me, it's between this and Firecracker for best opening track this band has done. I can't really pick which one I like more. It kind of depends on what day it is. And I have to say, if that intro does not get you hyped for this record, you probably want to check yourself for a pulse. Because it really just grabs hold and does not let go.
No, it's this band operating at like their peak performance, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's just like pedal to the floor, like the drums everything's as tight as it can possibly be, and at this point in the band's lineup.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's interesting that this song has a lot of like positive emotions behind it. And it kind of feels like a red herring because very soon things are going to get very dark.
So the lyrics really seem like they'd work well as like a Youth Crew song or something like that. Like, you got to break that chain and move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. I'd like to see a Youth
Yeah.
Crew type band cover this song and see what that would be like.
Ooh, that would be cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about getting out of your head and breaking out of those patterns and thought cycles that make you feel like you're trapped. It's it's a song about mindfulness, and it still carries a lot of power to this day, and maybe more than it ever did before. And for me, it's the last part of the song that's always resonated with me. It's 'cause it's just like evergreen, where he says, Sometimes you get too close to see a different side of what life could be, and if you stare too long, it all becomes a blur, and it's easy to forget just who you are. Don't stare too hard. Just take a look around. It's such like a great sentiment and an amazing way to close an opening song.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting you bring up mindfulness with this too, because like it seems like the song is about very specifically like a friend who got like dealt like a shit hand in life, and that put them in survival mode. And that's they've been in that mode for so long that they can't really see beyond what's like immediately in front of them. And um, mindfulness has been used for people that like I guess like grew up in like gang situations as a way to like as part of like cognitive behavioral therapy, like as a way to like help people who like you've constantly been in this like mode of like fight or flight all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't function in like normal society as a result. And so yeah, I think that this is super uplifting. Like
Yeah.
I think I definitely like this more than Firecracker. I think Firecracker is great, and like most of this band's opening tracks are all really really great. But I think this one takes the cake.
Yeah. Firecracker's great, but I don't. This song I can't picture at any other point in the album. Whereas Firecracker,
Oh.
you could feasibly place that in another spot, and I would still enjoy it as much. I think that's what edges out over Firecracker as far as the better opener.
Yeah, I think I can see that. Yeah, there is no other opening track. You know, this is the one, and there are other ones that we'll talk about later that maybe sort of could have been, but this is just hands down. This is like, I'll concede and just say it probably is the best opening track they ever wrote. And hey, they say the name of the band. Any more thoughts?
No.
Close to see.
Great song.
Fantastic song. Okay, let's move on to Exhumation of Virginia Madison, which for me, I believe this was the very first strung out song I ever heard. Because I want to say that it like at this point we've reminisced so many times about Fat Wreck comps. I think it was whatever, maybe it was it like Life in the Fat Lane or something? It was
That would have been volume 4.
4. I think it was Fat Music 4 that was probably the first one that I got. So this
That was definitely the first one I got too.
yeah. So I think this is like it's whichever one this is on, and I think it was that one.
I think you're right. I'm looking it up right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, for me it was either this or In Harm's Way
Mm-hmm.
off of Fat Music for Fat People.
Yeah, that was probably my second one.
This is, I think, the best song about loving the dead since Code Blue.
You're absolutely right. It was Virginia Madison on Fat 4, by the way.
Okay, I thought so. Yeah, I just remember being so struck by hearing this song on that comp, just because it sounds so different from everything else on that comp.
Yeah, that was all the Fat comps were really good at being varied, but I think that was one of the best ones as far as the variety of stuff you got on that record.
Yeah. Yeah, it just strung out sound in general. It just, when you listen to all the other bands on the label, you listen to them, you're like, does this really fit? And we just kind of accept it because it's always been there. But, listening to those comps, like, it really stood out to me. And this is a really great song. It's one of my favorites on the album. It's so catchy. And to Ben's point, it is a story about someone driving out to the edge of town, not to necessarily dig up his girlfriend, but I guess he is digging her up, but he's like, I guess he's digging her up to take one last look before he joins her and then like buries himself.
Yeah, still an incredibly dark song after all these years.
Yeah. But then he's sort of it's very romantic. But then he sort of like wakes up from like a reverie and recognizes that it's not real. He's just like dreaming. But I guess it's the grief of loss is still very intense, and so he ends the song going to do what he was dreaming he was doing, I guess.
Yeah.
It's definitely like an interesting story. It has more of a story than most strung out songs, I would say.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, stuff's generally way more vague, like a lot of the bands in this era. But yeah, this is definitely one of the more strictly like a narrative kind of story song.
Yeah, it definitely stands out because of that. And I think this is a good example of how Jason's lyrics in particular, well, I guess Jason and Jim Cherry, because they both wrote songs on this record.
Yeah.
But Jason in particular, when you look at all of his lyrics as a whole, very very detailed. I'd say it's comparable to what Cinderblock does in Tilt. Somehow finds a way to put in a lot of like interesting details and squeeze words in there that are most bands wouldn't even try to do, and it might seem even like unnecessary, but it adds so much to it. All right, any more thoughts on this song?
No.
I'm thoughtless.
Okay, now we talk about DeVille, which this is my favorite song on this record. I think it's always been my favorite song.
The song jams, dude. The drums on this sound so like punchy and mean. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
The drums on the remaster in general definitely sound way more punishing.
They
and,
do.
Like, hard
they absolutely
than they
do.
did on the previous version.
Really, really crisp and like strong sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This song is 2 minutes and 11 seconds, and every time I listen to it, it feels like it starts and then it's just over.
Yeah, it's very, very, very like in and out. It's very curt and concise.
I would say it's one of the few songs where I find myself thinking like that could have gone another 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is I think a good thing to have, like always.
Yeah.
Always
leave
leaving
one more.
Yeah. It really, really leaves you wanting more. Yeah, I remember listening to this song over and over and over again, so long ago. And coming back to it every time, I'm just like, God damn, that's a great song.
It really is.
Yeah. Just the intro alone. I mean, my God, like it has the guitar leads. I mean, we could say this about pretty much every song on this record.
Yeah, the guitars are insane on this record.
But this song in particular just blows me. It just floors me every time. I love how it sounds like a wind up to start before it pops off. It's so cool.
It does.
And Jordan's drumming is so good with how it paces out, the song, and like, he's not going full blast the whole time. There are parts where he does that start and stop. This just really adds something. And all of Jason's hooks are just so good. Every part of the song feels memorable. Yeah, I don't know. They found a way to go really really fast, but then still rein it in and allow it to breathe, all in just a little bit over 2 minutes. It's like it feels like a masterwork of like this style of songwriting.
Right.
And then lyrically, this feels really close to Wrong Side of the Tracks from Suburban Teenage Wasteland Blues. It's like about that push and pull of motivation to change your ways and how many stops and starts you have along the way, which I think it's being communicated at the very beginning of the song, where he says, "This goddamn car is broken down again. Looks like I'm sleeping in the back and I'll be dreaming of a better place, only to call you in the morning with the same excuse again by the side of the freeway watching all the cars go by." Because I read this as like an analogy of his motivation being compared to like other people who are moving forward.
So could that also be a case of drank too much and couldn't drive, and so that's why that's always the same excuse? The car broke down and I had to sleep in it.
Yeah, it could be literal too, but
Yeah.
I think either way, yeah, it's it holds some kind of like meaning, like a bigger meaning.
The part that really stuck out to me were the lyrics to the chorus, which seems to be describing like somebody who can like just temporarily reach a state of equanimity. And then it slips out of his fingers, right? Like for one moment I could see clearly the weight of the world don't seem so bad, which is like that's equanimity. And then I find myself right here, right where
right where you started again.
Terribly.
Yeah, that's.
I got you pulled out a $10 tilt lyric and you couldn't finish the rest of the sentence afterwards. You used all your stats on like the big word, and you just gambled on the rest of it, and the rest of it just all fell apart.
You really did. You ran out of MP.
RAM missing.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, it's just a phenomenal song, top to bottom.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now we're gonna change gears in a big way because these first 3 songs are so like upbeat and super fast, and then you get to Mind of My Own, and it's like, whoa!
Ooh, they get so dark so quick.
Yeah, it really takes a turn. And this is the first song that you get from Jim Cherry. And like, it's like you need that change up after those 3 like incredible poppy songs sort of. And this is like so much darker, so much moodier and brooding.
So indicative of where they end up going forward from here too, as far as like the next couple records too.
Yeah. I mean, it's I mean, it really hits hard on that part, like just like how dark it is when it gets to that bridge, and he has that line, "I preach my pessimism right out loud to anyone who listens." It's like, oh,
yeah,
okay. Oh, um, yeah, and I think the song lyrically, it's getting at something that we're a lot more aware of today when it comes to like prescription drugs and what it does to a person.
Being over medicated or not properly medicated.
It seems like it's just really in all of his songs to kind of do this, but they really like highlighting how much he's struggling with substances. And I think that this is probably why he ends up leaving the band. Because I tried looking around for interviews from around this time period. I couldn't find any. I found some later interviews, and I found maybe one in particular where somebody mentions, they didn't say anything bad about Jim, but they did say that they definitely clashed a lot with him towards the end. And that's probably why he had to go. But yeah, I mean, all you have to do is read the lyrics, and it feels like this is why.
Yeah.
So I didn't take the drugs to really be the focus of the song, though. Like I thought that kind of overall, this is like a very astute observation about how like we really don't have minds of our own. Like each part of the song is talking about different ways that like we are being influenced. Like, I'm influenced by everything I see. Everything in my life just thinks for me. And so like he's talking about TV originally, then he moves to like the psychiatric drugs and all that. Like there's all these things that are kind of pushing and influencing the way he thinks. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, like we're all kind of caught in that. Like none of us actually have truly minds of our own. We can only really focus on, what we pay. We can only control what we focus on or pay attention to.
Yeah, I think we're all being influenced. I don't think there's any way around that, especially now, where we have these little devices in our pockets that, unless you want to just, throw that in the river or something. So it's hard to get away from. You try to have original thought, and maybe you do, and but like you can't be completely original. It's not really possible.
Mhm.
We're all interconnected in ways that we never were before. Um, but I think ultimately, I think there is one or there are two lines that capture the song, very succinctly, like the feeling and the emotion behind it, and it's where he says, "I'm not afraid to be alive. I'm afraid to be alone."
Yeah.
I think that pretty much sums it all up.
Mhm.
Okay, let's move on to "Reason to Believe," um, which if you thought that one was a lot harder, and you get to this one, it's like, oh man, okay,
Plus, this one's got some badass solos in it too.
yeah,
It's
for
one of the
sure.
first songs with some really, really solid solos.
It's one of the moshiest strung out songs as
Yeah, I would
well.
agree with that.
Yeah. This one reminds me. It almost seems like a like not necessarily like a redo, but it is very reminiscent of "Bring Out Your Dead" and that
Yeah, I
guitar
could definitely
solo.
see that. It's very similar.
Yeah. Um, and like the metal influence is definitely being like it's coming
Oh,
through
the riffs are
full on.
the up and down like pick like thrash riffing is really there.
Yeah. Sorry, you cut out for a second.
Oh, I was just saying that the thrash riffing is definitely like comes up a lot on this record from here on out.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
does. Uh, yeah, this is one of the songs that um really signals where the band's going. It's kind of its DNA. It sort of ends up in a lot of the records over the next like decade, I would say.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Um,
So I kind of disagree with the song though. Not having a reason to believe isn't necessarily the worst thing. The Nazis really believed in what they were doing, so having a reason to believe could be pretty awful.
touche.
yeah, I mean, I agree with you there. This is like one of the only songs on here where I was reading the lyrics. I was like, oh, I don't know if I really feel that way. But he's definitely pissed off about it. He feels like he's part of a lost generation, which I know it that was like a common sentiment at the time. Because you'll hear bands express things, but there are no great wars at the time or anything like that to sort of define the generation. Nothing to really get behind. No big giant movements.
I don't know, man. My Desert Shield trading cards would beg to differ. Got the Norman Schwarzkopf card and everything.
um. So something notable about this song, though, is this is one of the few songs, if not maybe the only song, where you really hear Jim Cherry come in and do vocals.
Oh yeah.
Uh, he does vocals, like he does his own songs in some of the older Pulley records, um, but he never really did that in Strung Out. But this feels, I think this is the only time where he ever like Jason really lets him take center stage. And it's only for like a minute, or not a minute, but like just like a quick couple lines. But I think it's really good. Like it adds something that I kind of wish they would have done more, and it makes me wish that for so many reasons I wish he had stayed in this band, but just because he seemed to add something to them that
Yeah.
they lost, and you can. It doesn't mean that this is the last strung out record that I really liked because it's not, but it is different going forward after this one.
Yeah, for sure.
But Jim does go on to form Zero Down, so we're not done talking about Jim Cherry, thankfully.
Can't
Um,
wait for that record.
Dude, that's a great one.
It's been a really long time since I've gone back to that one, so I'm looking forward to revisiting it. Yeah, reason to believe. It's definitely a part of Strung Out that informs where they go, no doubt. All right, let's move on to Crossroads, which swings back to the other way in terms of its style. It feels like older material, maybe something more like something from Another Day in Paradise almost. But it's just a lot more polished and more memorable overall.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think
is that
because it's more polished, I thought it had like a very strong suburban teenage wasteland blues
that was
vibe. But
my kind of vibe
yeah.
too, yeah.
Yeah. Just older material in general. It feels a little bit more throwback.
There's another track too where I think it benefits from the remaster where you can hear a lot of the backing vocals
Yeah.
that you definitely could not hear before.
Yeah.
Because most of my years listening to this record have been through headphones, whether it was at school or whatever. And listening to the remaster, that's the biggest takeaway I got was there's so many songs where I was like, I had no idea there were backing vocals here.
Right. I had the similar thoughts with not just the backing vocals, but like, I mean, on the whole, the bass. The bass felt
Yeah,
like
that too.
it felt like I was hearing it for the first time in a lot of cases.
Which is funny because on Suburban, it was the total opposite. It was like they just ripped the bass out of a lot of the songs.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, the remaster really gives you a new level of appreciation for a lot of these songs because
Yeah,
I always liked this song. It's not one of my highlights, but
sure.
I do. But listening to it now, just it sounds so much better. That like I'm like, yeah, this is a really good song.
I do think it's funny that even when this band writes like what you might consider for them to be like a filler track, it still comes out fucking badass. Like they can't just write like a boring filler track. They're like, it's got to have like a solo and it's got to be really sick. So,
Well, it was a single. It probably wasn't really meant to be a filler track.
No, I don't think it was.
No, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like when people talk about this record, this isn't the songs that like generally gets name dropped.
Right. That is an interesting point because, Crossroads and Illusions was the EP.
Well, that's right. Yeah, the EP. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it came out before this. And this was on there. Obviously, that's what it's in the title. But like,
Right.
you would have thought that would have been one of the highlights from the record, and then you get into the record and you're just like, wow, there's a lot of songs on here that are much better than this.
Right. Yeah, the first 3 tracks alone, you're like,
right.
Okay, well, 2 of these are now like mainstays of the band for the next
Forever.
2 decades, 3 decades, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I liked this way more than Virginia Madison.
Wow,
really?
Interesting.
Oh.
Yeah. Virginia Madison is like, it's a good song, but I think it's like kind of mid on this record.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think maybe what like makes this song maybe a slightly less memorable for me, this is a song about being in a band, and we've talked about it many times. Those are not the best songs usually.
Often not the most relatable.
Right. But I think this is a song that does it in a way that's not too specific. Like you can still relate to it, because it's talking about it being a job, and I think that is a better tack to take with this, because everybody, has a job that like, if you let it overtake your whole being, it's gonna like really like become like a difficult thing to grapple with.
Yeah.
And I think that's basically what the song is getting at. You have to make a living and you got to be able to work with people, and that's really what it's about ultimately.
So I agree that I think that's probably what it is, but I kind of thought you could look at this as almost like the you and the song being directed at the listener. in particular, like the "Got Nothing Left to Give to You," and like the idea I'm getting off of this is that like he writes, a lot of the stuff he's writing seems to be informed by what seems to be personal trauma. And like what I'm kind of getting from this is I keep having to dig that shit up and it's not good for me. And I have to find a better way to find material to sing about that isn't me just like reliving shitty parts of my life over and over again. And so that's kind of how I interpret the business soon becomes reality part, is that like the business aspect of being in a band is you've got to keep producing stuff and you got to keep mining those veins in your life that produces stuff, and it's not sustainable.
Right. And he's at a crossroads of,
yes,
can I keep doing this? Am I like burning out? So yeah, I see where you're coming from. So I think it can, it could be both.
Yeah. I mean, I think mine's a little more out there than just straight up like this is life in a band, but I can see the threads there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're probably not wrong. Because I can totally understand that too. All right, talk about the last song on side one, Paper Walls, which is another big time standout for me. The guitar leads on this song are iconic. There's the way the guitars are like intertwined throughout it is like so
there's
impressive
so much going on.
Yeah, it's really complex, or it sounds complex. And this was another one of those songs where it had been so long since I really sat down and actively listened to this record. Like, I listened to it so heavily in high school, and then I sort of took a break from it, but I would still come back to it every once in a while because I love this record. But I wasn't actively listening to it in the way that I have been for, to do this podcast. And listening to the remaster and actively listening, I was just kind of like blown away. I was like, I'm picking up on things that I don't think were there before. And maybe if they were, they were just so buried, you just couldn't hear them.
Yeah.
I just like that. There's like clean guitar riffs that come in briefly during the chorus. I just don't remember that. And I'm sure it was there, but it had to have been muted in some way.
Yeah, there was just so many other things going on. It's a tough thing to balance that many tracks, I'd imagine.
Yeah. And again, like I just feel like I'm hearing the bass in a way that I never could before. Like, and it adds
I agree.
a whole other dimension to the song. I mean, you could just hear him hammering on the bass at certain points. Where I was like, wow, that is so fucking good. I just don't remember it. Yeah, I mean, and in the bridge when everything slows down, that's like my favorite part of the song. It just underscores the vocals and the lyrics really well, and it just takes the song to like an entirely different level, I think. What do you think about this one, Ben?
So I agree with like the main guitar part here is fucking awesome. It's kind of somber, kind of uplifting. The song very clearly seems to be about a very dysfunctional relationship. And it sounds like he does not want to let go, but he's also kind of begging for a killing blow, which I, assume people can like kind of relate to, where like, you can't bring yourself to get out yourself, and so you're just trying to get them to end it themselves. Yeah. Good song.
Yeah. Thoughts, Josh?
No, just other than that, what we said, but yeah, I'm good.
The last thing I'll say about this song is, like, on any other band's record, this would be the last song.
Yeah, this is totally a last song vibe, I think.
But instead, they've got something special reserved for that. All right, so that's gonna do it for side one. Now, let's do a little Q&A. And I want to first pose a question to the panel. Do you have anything that you would say you have the ultimate devotion to? Like, we'll talk about the song Ultimate Devotion soon. But, like, is there any particular thing that you just, like, you'll never be able to give it up?
That's a good question.
I feel like I know what your answer is going to be, and it's probably like the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head as an answer for this, Alex. So why don't you tell us what you're going to say?
I mean, it's art for me.
I
No,
thought it was
it's
going to
not
be
what I
coffee.
thought. Yeah.
Oh,
I thought it was
no.
absolutely
Based
thought
on
it
the
was
way
going to
you
be
talk
coffee.
about it on here.
No. Well, okay, maybe.
Art, I guess, makes more sense than coffee, but
I'm waiting for the day. I'm waiting for the day when they're just like, it's like, sorry, coffee's extinct. Like,
yeah.
But no, I mean, no matter what I do, like I can never get away from like making art of some kind. Like, it's just not possible for me. Like, there's just no way that anybody, like, if anything ever got really got in the way and like prohibited me from making stuff and creative expression, it just wouldn't happen. I wouldn't let it. If it got in the way, I'd find a way around it. Art is, and I think it's a better analogy too, just because sometimes art doesn't want to be made, especially me over the past 4 or 5 years or so, especially during the pandemic. I just feel like I've never really recovered. I was in a groove making stuff. I was making and then I just hit like a serious wall with it, and it's been a serious struggle. So a harsh mistress, I'll say.
You should do an ayahuasca ceremony.
You have to go to like South America for that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I'm just trying to think of things people do to like.
You can get anything in America now. It might have fentanyl in it. That's all. You just have to watch out.
Great.
just test it. That's all.
Yeah. Okay.
Test your ayahuasca, kids.
Break out my little traveling lab kit and get right on
it. Hey, I think you get them at CVS. It's just a little vial. It's fine.
Taste
the purity. Do you guys have an answer for this, or
I don't know? Probably weed. I'm just gonna be honest about my dependencies. It's probably weed.
It's probably a joke answer, but like lately, like I drink it a lot. Not every day, but the Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee is like the most refreshing iced coffee I've ever had, and I'm pretty dang devoted to that. Maybe this says more about my ability to commit to things than anything else, but you know.
Well, I'll believe you when you show me your Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee tattoo.
That could come at some point.
Okay. All right. Well, I look forward to
it. If you get a coffee tattoo, I'll get a donut tattoo to match it.
That's cute.
I got a French crawler.
So this album is called Twisted by Design. And we thought, what better way to celebrate that
than with French crawlers?
Than to read BuzzFeed's 11 horrific and thankfully historical ways in which humans killed each other. These are all very twisted by design. Number 1, Celtic druids in the British Isles were said to fill wicker figures with people who would then be burned alive as sacrificial offerings. You can see... So this is the Wicker Man. Also featured heavily in the manga Berserk, and about to be featured in the game Elden Ring coming out. They have a giant Wicker Man full of burning bodies in that.
Holy shit, really?
And it's a boss you have to fight too, so it'll be really fun.
So fucking metal.
How to get burned?
Number 2, the Romans executed their criminals in elaborate rituals, usually involving the prisoners reenacting a myth that resulted in gruesome and humiliating deaths.
Dang.
So, I guess criminals were burnt alive as an imitation of Hercules, chained up and had their entrails torn out, like in the story of Prometheus.
I missed that.
This
chapter.
one's just horrific. I'm not even going to mention this one. That's so terrible.
Oh my god.
I mean, you can Google the article yourself. Number 3 was the ancient Greeks.
Censored himself. Dang.
So the one I censored involved a bull, is all I'll say. The ancient Greeks also had their fair share of bull-themed horrific executions. The brazen bull was a system in which the victim was placed inside a bronze bowl. The sculpture would then be heated, roasting the person inside. And thanks to an acoustic apparatus, their screams would come out sounding like the cries of a bull.
Oh, it's like the first Twitch stream.
But it's not just Europe. In Japan, they had the hitobashira, which was a practice involved burying a living person at the foot or in the walls of a building to ensure its successful construction. And this was a common practice all over the world. There are mentions of it in the Old Testament and in India. There are buildings and bridges in the walls and structures of which bodies of men, women, and children can be found.
Jesus.
I kind of feel like that's cheating. So this should only be called a top 10 if they're saying they also did that in other places. The Aztecs would take prisoners and then fatten them up and later sacrifice them to their sun god by tearing out the heart. The corpse would be tumbled down the stairs of the pyramid on which the sacrifice took place.
Yeah, they showed that in Apocalypto, that crazy Mel Gibson movie.
That's not really that crazy of a I mean, I guess it kind of is, but like it's not very inventive. But before the introduction,
were very tall. I mean, to be fair, the bodies fall a really long way.
Before the introduction of Christianity, the people of Fiji would strangle the widows of recently deceased men. So it was believed that only married people could enter the afterlife, and that wives had to accompany their husbands as proof of their marriage. And so they kill the wife so that the husband could get into heaven, or whatever the fuck it is.
Good Lord.
Vestal virgins. Those were sacred in ancient Rome. They were priestesses of the goddess Vesta, and their chastity was seen as being directly linked to the health of Rome. If a Vestal virgin became no longer a virgin, this would be treated as an act of treason, and her punishment would be to be buried alive. Number 9, in an ancient Mongol law, it was forbidden to spill royal blood. Of course, you don't conquer the largest kingdom in history without killing off a few nobles, so they crushed them to death instead. So I guess they were trampled. Or no, they placed a wooden slab over them. And they feasted and partied on top of that slab, which would slowly crush them.
Whoa.
What kind of Garth Ennis ass death is that?
That's fucking sick, though. Like, you're gonna lay a board over somebody, and then you're gonna have a party on top of them until they die? That's amazing.
That's really spiteful.
During the Dutch revolt in the 16th century, the Dutch would kill, or at least torture, their political prisoners using rats, who would gnaw through the abdomens of the victims.
Jesus. It's like the bad guy in Too Fast, Too Furious.
The last one. In medieval Sweden, prisoners could be sentenced to the Cave of Roses, which sounds far nicer than it was.
I was going to say.
Because instead of roses, the cave was actually filled with thousands of poisonous insects and reptiles. Jesus. So you would just be sent into a cave full of poisonous things and die.
Yeah, the cave of thousands of poisonous snakes and reptiles does not have the same ring as the Cave of Roses. One is far less romantic.
Those are some pretty horrific ways to die.
Yeah, I mean, that's
bad. None of those seemed real cool.
Did you ever talk about the horses, though? Like pulling somebody apart?
No, they didn't include that. So like the drawn and quartered or whatever the hell it is.
I don't know what era that's from, but that also feels like it would be the worst thing ever.
Yeah, it sounds worse than at least one of those. The one that I said was weak. The tumbling. Yeah, that's definitely worse than the Aztecs ripping out the heart and kicking you down the steps.
Yeah. I think so,
Oh,
yeah.
just-
I mean,
Your dumb body just falling forever.
can you just imagine like you're just being pulled apart like some sort of like cotton candy or fucking that sucks.
I think they have something like that in one of the Faces of Death movies.
Oh, jeez.
Oh man, those things were crazy.
I never. So it once got put on while I was in the room at like, I don't know, like my grandma's house. Like my uncles rented it or something like that, and like my mom immediately just picked me up and took me out of the room. I was like very small at the time. So that was the closest I ever got to seeing Faces of Death.
I owned
Wow.
one that I bought from like a record store I was like vaguely working at in high school. And I remember it was like there was most of the stuff seemed pretty fake, but there was a few in there that seemed pretty real. Like there was a guy working on a car and like the jack stand fell and like severed his leg. And I was like, I think I'm gonna stop watching Faces of
man.
Death now.
Yeah, no thanks. Well, thanks for that, Ben.
That got dark.
Well, the darkness is not over. Because we're moving over to side 2 of this record.
With a super fucking metal song. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's very fucking new metal,
It
kind of borders on metalcore.
carries that
sounding.
vibe. I mean, just that really ominous buzzing guitar to start things off is just like,
Yeah.
you immediately know that you're in for something heavy.
And they say the title of the album in the song.
Yes, they do. This is where they say it. And yeah, I mean, it's just the most metal song here. And
Does this very metal song have a Dinosaur Jr. reference slipped into it?
That's exactly what I have here.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if that was intentional.
Yeah, me
or
too.
maybe,
Yeah.
Or if that phrase was just maybe more common than it is now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought the exact same thing. But yeah, I mean, this song is like a panic attack put to music.
That's a great way to describe it, actually.
Because like Jason's vocals have so much anxiety behind them. It's really interesting because it's like it's almost like theatrical in a way. Because he's really putting on like an affectation of like somebody having like just experiencing high anxiety and just like
yeah, it's almost like he's singing while he's gritting his teeth. Sometimes
Right.
it sounds like in the song.
Yeah. And there's like all those like whispering voices in the background. It just like it has such an unsettling atmosphere to the whole thing. And then the lyrics themselves are just so intensely angry. It is definitely like I would say the angriest, meanest song here.
Absolutely.
It has to be. It's an intense track. I mean, what a way to start side 2 of a record.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good. I say it's very new metal, but like of the kind of new metal sounding songs on this album, I think it's the better one. You know, you say anxiety, but I'm almost kind of getting a vibe of like this is somebody who's chronically depressed, and the response to that is just rage, because that gets you out of feeling depressed if you're just angry.
Yeah, I totally see that.
And also just kind of how you are your own, like this internal critic that's just driving the depression itself too. Like he is,
Yeah.
you know, the one that's driving all of it with his internal criticisms.
Yeah. Yeah, he's very tightly wound, is the whole feeling of the vocals too. So I think it's all of those things. Yeah, it's really like it's a standout track because of just like how different it is from everything else, but it still fits. All right, now let's move on to Ultimate Devotion. This this is another one written by Jim Cherry. The drum and bass intro is really great.
Yeah.
And that guitar solo that comes in before the chorus is really awesome too. But we're talking about the things that we're ultimately devoted to here, but he's ultimately devoted to something else entirely. There's a lot of BDSM imagery at play here.
Yeah.
We talked on Suburban Teenage Wasteland Blues, we talked about solitaire, and we were just kind of like talking about like, is that what he's talking about there with the cat o' nine tails and everything? But that was written by Jason. This is Jim. And he is not coding anything. Like, you're not wondering about any of it. Like, he just it just kind of says it all. He literally just like, these are some of the lyrics. A flair for the strange and a temper like a whip. A soft hand clutches a riding crop grip. Smell of latex rubber drives me insane. Beat him once, then send him on his way. There's no room in your life for anyone to stay. Engrave your moniker in welts of pain. Wow.
Sounds like a Marilyn Manson song.
Right?
B is for bondage.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude sounds like he likes being dominated. That girl must be super hot. What did you guys think of this one?
I love it. I mean, this was another one of the early Strung. It wasn't the first one because obviously Virginia Madison would have been, but going back to those comps, this song, like Rotten Apple, were all on different fat comps. Generally in like a demo version, I noticed too, because I went back and listened. They do sound a little bit different than like even the original studio versions.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to hear the way the songs change, but this is just such a classic Strung Out song.
Yeah. I think it remains a song that they play a lot.
It's interesting too. Like, I wish I would have been an active fan as this record was coming out, because I bought it probably a couple of years. It was probably a couple of years old by the time I purchased a copy. But I'd be interested to see back then how the people who were on board from like the first record by this point, like where their heads are at as far as these like really metal influenced songs that are pretty much, a lot of them are polar opposites to anything this band has written before, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is really interesting that they went this direction. And I can completely understand why they ended up staying on this path and kept exploring this. First of all, they're huge fans of that kind of music.
Oh yeah, those dudes are all like self-professed, Ozzy and Sabbath and metal dorks from a young age.
Right. So like, and because of that, I don't know that like they would have ever been as good at writing, like those guitar parts, like Rob in particular, without that fandom. Like, I just don't think he would have ever pushed himself to play that fast if he wasn't like a fan of thrash and metal and stuff.
Sure.
But it is interesting. They probably started to see that they had a lot of crossover appeal once they did this.
I would imagine.
They probably went out on the road and started playing these songs, and they're just like, oh, we've actually got like a different crowd of people coming out to see the band now. Because there's a lot of variation here, which is what makes the record so good, is like it's constantly changing things up, and you never get bored with any of it.
Yeah, well, the fact that they're so good at all of it too, like they can play every angle with such a level of talent that it's ridiculous.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, they probably did alienate some people with some of the songs, but then all you got to do is, oh, I'm not into that. Let's skip over to the next song, King Alvarez.
Sure.
And it's a completely different vibe.
Yeah, wait 2 minutes and you're gonna find something that's really, tickle your musical bone or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with King Alvarez, like it's really switching gears to something much lighter. Which I think, like after those two songs, you need something like this. So like it's really good sequencing. And I mean this song is so good. It's so catchy.
It's incredibly fun, yeah.
Yeah. Like the leads are amazing in this one too.
Definitely top 3 on this record for me.
Yeah,
King Alvarez.
it's so good. So, any thoughts? I could not find any kind of references of what King Alvarez even references.
Oh,
Any?
I
Do you
have a
know?
lot of thoughts about this.
Really?
So-
Okay.
So I think it is about like one of those local legend homeless people.
That's exactly I was going to tell you. Supposedly,
Oh,
that is
yeah?
exactly what it is.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm going to in the show notes. I'm going to provide a link to a documentary about the LTD Nutsack Man. So when I was in grad school, there was this man who was naked except for a thong, riding his bike around school, and like we'd be like in the middle of the class, and he'd just periodically be screaming "nutsack" at the top of his lungs.
I remember you
As he
telling
like
me about
rides
this
on the
guy.
school. Yeah. So there's a documentary about him. Like apparently, like there's a backstory to like why he does this that relates to the local like public transit agency. I think like he got banned from public transit for probably similar types of behavior. And so like I think most directly this song is about somebody like that.
I could totally see that for sure.
I also think you could go off the deep end and read the song as it's like those types of people are God incarnated on earth. Like Gray Sky Man is talking to the sidewalk once again. Your perfect vision of the world, it goes unheard, right? Like so like imagining somebody who is, God incarnate, like probably would seem like just fucking insane to like normal ordinary people.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and I think that actually that makes a lot of sense. And then the only other thing that I sort of picked up on the lyrics was that it is probably about a guy like that in Los Angeles just because he has that line, it's just another sunny day here in the land of Babylon.
Yeah.
And I say Los Angeles specifically, well that's where they're from. But also this, when you think about the stories of Babylon, like the biblical story of it, it's a place where God stopped everybody from speaking the same language and scattered them across the earth. And Los Angeles is a pretty solid reflection of that kind of thing because you have so many people from so many different backgrounds inhabiting the same place, and you just on any no matter where you go in this city, if you're walking around, you are going to hear somebody speaking a language that you don't know, unless you're some sort of savant that knows all kinds of languages. But I'm always like I'll just go to a different neighborhood and you'll hear all kinds of different things, and yeah, whenever I hear that line now, I always think it's like, yeah, this place kind of feels that way. But
I did just check because I was wondering if maybe Cemetery meant like compared Los Angeles to Babylon, and it doesn't directly, but like with the types of things they use to describe Los Angeles in Cemetery, it would definitely seem like they're comparing it to Babylon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's probably right. It'll be interesting to when we eventually get to talk about that song too, because that song has like an interesting backstory that I discovered when I was reading through some interviews. But yeah, King Alvarez, really interesting song and on pretty much every level. But like, I think that was, what a great call on that, Ben. I sort of like thought that it could have something to do with that kind of thing, but I think you nailed it.
Yeah. At first, I remember when I first heard the song, I kind of thought it was about a boxer. I have no idea why. Well, isn't there's a song about a boxer on American Paradox, right?
There is.
Yeah,
And
maybe I kind of just in my head connected the songs for some reason, but
well, what's interesting is that there's actually an MMA fighter that has a name that he's like the Underground King Alvarez, but he doesn't have any kind, like I don't think he came around until well after this record came out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that you say that. All right, King Alvarez, fantastic song. Let's move on to Asking for the World, which is more of a the only mid-tempo ballad that I would say is on
Yeah,
this
it's
record.
a Jake song on this one.
And
Jake Kiley, I think, wrote this one.
Yeah, it's the only one that he wrote the leads for. And I really like this song.
I think it's great. Even among the poppy songs on this record, it still stands out as being even very different from them.
Yeah, and it still fits. I think that's just
yeah, absolutely,
the amazing thing about this record. And we'll talk about a record a little bit later that cannot do this. It just really struggles with trying to do a lot of different things and having it feel like a cohesive record. But that's what I don't know. This record, they just really brought it on here where I don't understand how they could make all of these songs that are so different kind of come together and you're just like, no, this fits. It
yeah.
feels
The
like
fact that it
belongs.
flows is insane
Yeah.
to me. Because it's so, like you said, it's so dramatically different from section to section.
Yeah. And so this is another great track in terms of the sequencing too, because it again you kind of need something like this at some point. And I think it really works. That guitar solo always gets me. It soars so high,
It really does.
It's amazing. Absolutely love that part. What'd you think about it, Ben?
Not a fan. I really hate the whiny parts to this song. I agree that it works well from a sequencing perspective, but this is probably my least favorite song on the record.
I'm not surprised to hear you say this. I think as I was listening to it, I was like, I feel like Ben will not like this song. All right, let's move on to Tattoo. This one feels like a holdover from Suburban Teenage Wasteland Blues.
Definitely. I mean, it's good, not great. I like it in the way I like some of the other songs that aren't as well known on this album. I mean, it fits perfectly fine, but if it was cut, I don't know that I would be heartbroken either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of go back and forth on that. I think I feel ultimately the same as you do about it, but I still really like this song.
Yeah.
It's got a nice little solo thrown in there. Just I don't know. That's all these songs have all these really great little flourishes that they add that just even when a song is maybe not quite what it as good as a lot of the other things on here, it still has its moments. What did you think of this one?
Yeah, no, so I really dig this song. The thing that really sells me on this song is that Jason's voice and the music kind of whips and winds around through the chorus. So specifically that, and now I'm hanging on to every word I never said to you part. It's like he's hanging on to a moving car that's whipping around or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That alone I think makes the song worth it to me.
Yeah, it's a good point. I do really like that about it too. So that one was also written by Jim Cherry, and the last one that was written by Jim is the next track, Just Like Me. And oh man, this song, it is this song's a little scary. It's just everything that he's expressing, I think so much of Strung Out's songwriting is informed by emotion. You're never guessing what the feeling you're supposed to get from the song is. Because there's lots and lots of examples out there of songs where you're just like, oh, this one has this really uplifting kind of sound to it, but then you read the lyrics, you're like, whoa, that's not at all what I thought that was going to be about. But that just doesn't happen with this band. I mean, this band is so focused on, no, the music has to match the mood of the lyrics and what they're trying to express. And this one is one of those, like, where it just like you're immediately going like, oh, this is kind of messed up. Yeah, I mean, it's just another example of how Jim was definitely in a dark place while writing this record.
Yeah.
But this song still manages to have, you know, a good hook to it. Just despite how twisted it all is.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good song. The lyrics, I'm of two minds of them. I think you can kind of just very straightforward take it as like a controlling boyfriend. But I kind of think it's about like the types of projection that we do to other people, where like when we try to have like a theory of mind about other people and we think about like what's going on through their minds, we impose that they're just like us.
Yeah.
And so I, you know, that I think is a little bit more high level. I mean, it probably does have to do with like kind of wanting to make your partner fit a vision you have of them, but like I kind of also think there's a element of, you know, like when I look at people, I'm assuming that they think about things the exact same way I think about them, and that's how I, you know, project myself into the world.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's I agree with that. And yeah, I mean, it can be taken both ways, I would say. But that's the more interesting theory behind the meaning of the song. So I think I'll go with what you said. Any more thoughts on Just Like Me?
No.
All right. Let's talk about the closing track. I mean, this is the
The
de facto,
closer.
Yeah, it's the de facto closing song.
Move over, Kira Sedgwick.
I'm pretty sure.
How's that for a current reference?
Wow. You did it.
Show's been off the air for like a decade.
This song gets coffee.
It gets coffee. This is like, I mean, yeah, like this is the kind of like closing song that every band wishes they had, you know?
It took me a second on the coffee thing. I don't know why. I was just thinking you were calling about like something like to Alex, and then the Glengarry Glen Ross thing hit me, and I would start laughing.
Yeah, it just they still play it. I think that this is still the closing song. It has to be, right? Like,
I think so. If it's not, it's within like the last like couple songs of their set.
Yeah, I just feel like, you know, the fans would never accept any other song other than this as the ending. You know,
and then
maybe,
I mean, they've written some other decent closers, but yeah, I think demanding, like fan wise, this would still be. Yeah, Cemetery is really good.
Yeah, I could see that working as a set closer too, but like those two are the only ones.
No, I mean, in my opinion, they've got a whole bunch of really good closing songs.
Sure.
But this is the one that I don't know. It just feels like you don't pick anything else other than this one. But I mean, Cemetery.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Cemetery is really good, but it I don't know. It just kind of captures what the band is.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just has like the I mean, that guitar lead is so it feels so iconic and so uniquely strung out. At least to me anyway. I mean,
yeah, it somehow doesn't feel like any band could replicate that guitar lead, even though it's just, you know, you're just playing guitar. Like it feels so distinctly them.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you guys, since you guys both listen to a lot more metal than I do, I just don't really go for most of it. Is there anything about like what Strung Out does on this record that you think like, oh no, this is derivative of this other thing? Or does it really feel as, you know, sort of unique in the way that I think of it.
I mean, I feel like you probably see elements of stuff if you really looked for it, but these dudes all feel like they took a strong influence and made it kind of their own thing. Like it feels like Ozzy records and it feels like Iron Maiden sometimes, but it still feels more strung out than it does anybody else.
Yeah, the metal that they're drawing from is probably the stuff that I listen to the least. I mean, like, other than, like, I know they, describe themselves, I guess, early on as Descendants meets Slayer, like, fucking love
Right.
Slayer, but, like, I don't listen to Ozzy solo much. I don't really listen to Iron Maiden, so, like, I don't have good reference points for that.
Okay. Yeah, because it's just you just don't. I think that's always been like the struggle whenever we talk about like rival records and stuff. Is nobody else really sounds like this band. People,
No.
there are people that try. We'll talk about somebody that tries, but nobody can really do it. It's like you just don't have the right mix of influence and skill in order to do it. But back to this song in particular, I think Matchbook is this is like a building block song for the rest of their career. Like this is like a song that they use as like a North Star in some ways to write a lot of songs. But they never try to ape it. They never tried to like just do that again.
Yeah.
They always find a way to do something different, but they take elements of it and really build on it. And it is that good. There's so many cool things that are happening in the song. There's stuff they're doing here that they don't do anywhere else on the record, like the vocal layering that they do. Is really interesting. But that carries forward. That's a thing that they do later, a lot more.
Yeah, you see it a lot on like American Paradox stuff that you hear in Matchbook.
Yeah. And then I think a really interesting element is that like sped up voice track at the very end. It's such a weird touch.
I love that part. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like I don't know if it's Jason or somebody reading a list of like symptoms or something that you hear.
Yeah, it sounds like a pill bottle, like a warning bottle label off a pill bottle.
Medicine commercial that's just been like, it gets faster and faster and faster until he sounds like a little ant. It's just like another weird detail, that I would like to know where that comes from. And then and then the song itself it's about disconnecting from a totally dead relationship, and moving forward. It's interesting because it's a very cold song in terms of its the lyrics, but the song itself has like such like a hopeful warmth to it.
I mean, it's so much better than like what you often hear with breakup songs, right? Like it's a very uplifting, like move on with your fucking life. Don't sit here and stew about it.
Yeah, make your time. This is your time. Make it what you will.
Yeah, it's just the way he's phrasing like the moving on part. But then I think where it matches up with the feeling of the song is when he talks about it's like I've got my friends, just a million distractions keep me warm. Like that all fits the music.
It is definitely like a breakup song that I prefer listening to because it has that kind of what I consider to be a very uplifting message as part of it. Like, it's talking about the things you can do instead of thinking about it,
Right.
I'm kind of split on this, which makes me think they did this to the right degree, but like, I kind of think the song is a little too melodramatic, but that's, I think, largely because like the song really draws you into the feeling they're going for with it. Like you were talking about, like the songs are the feelings they want you to feel. Like they really draw you into that feeling with this song. And so like you can get sucked into like those moments of your life while listening to it.
Yeah. I think that's what makes this song so successful.
Do you think he and the person he wrote this song about were really into Oasis together?
I hope not.
Because What's the Story Morning Glory came out before this record came out, and he's just repeating "Don't look back in anger" over and over again at the end. And like like that was a big part of that record. So
Yeah, I mean it's totally possible. Jason in particular doesn't seem to share the exact same taste in music as the rest of the guys. Like most of
Yeah.
these guys talk about like how much they love metal, and then Jason's over here is like, nah, Bad Religion all the way. Um, and he listens to a
well,
lot of other different stuff too that's not punk. And that's just me pulling from interviews that I read.
yeah.
But he seems to really go outside of the genre. And take influence. So I would be surprised if like he really had been listening to it and was like, yeah, I'm gonna pull on that a little bit.
Mhm.
All right, so that's it for the album proper. But the remaster has the 2 bonus tracks that are from the Crossroads and Illusions EP.
Both bangers.
Yeah, these are both really fun songs, but I do ultimately feel like neither one of them really belongs on this record.
No, they don't. They feel like, I don't know. They feel just slightly off of the vibe.
Yeah, they feel a little bit disconnected. So I think that they made the right decision to leave them off. But I think both of these songs could have been sort of the lead off track for side 2 of this record. They have that sort
Yeah,
of
I could see that.
quality to their intros that feel like they're
Especially
kind of
Ghost Town for sure.
yeah, Ghost Town for sure. Um, but first we'll talk about Barfly, which I like the intro on this one. And like that has that I also really like that like high pitch like crescendoing effect that gets overlaid on the guitars. It's like this like I don't know how to describe it. It's just like I don't know. It's like a just the guitar sort of. It feels very very metal thing to do. It's like
Yeah, it kind of like swells and builds up.
yeah. It's like it only happens in that one part in the first verse, and they don't do it again. But it's like a fun detail. Um, Yeah, I mean, and then lyrically, it's it's kind of obvious. It's just about someone struggling with alcohol addiction. It's not really. I don't know that there's really anything to read any deeper on that.
No, I don't. There's not a whole lot of subtext.
No. What do you think about this one, Ben?
So I don't really have strong thoughts. Like I don't think either of these songs are bad. I don't really write anything down about either of them. And it's kind of like I don't think the songs are bad, but I also have a hard time telling you what they even sound like without having listened to them fairly recently, like
Mhm.
in the past, minute or something. Like that's kind of how I feel about them, is that they're both very,
Yeah,
I don't know.
they're not imparting a big impression on you, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think that yeah, I kind of feel the same. These are like 2 songs that I always am just like, oh yeah, I forgot about this song. But I
They
do
have way
like them.
better B-sides out there.
Oh, they do.
There's
And
so many good B-sides.
wow. Yeah, wait until we talk about prototypes and painkillers. We get to talk about all those
Yeah.
B-sides. Specifically Novocaine, which
Oh yeah.
I always wonder when that one in particular was recorded. It might have even been between Suburban and Twisted. That one is so good. But yeah, and then Ghost Town I like, but I think that it's the melody that's just not that strong. Like the
Yeah,
vocal
it's not,
melody is
there's
not.
just
There's much better, much stronger stuff on the album.
it just doesn't hit quite as hard as the record you just spent, the last half hour listening to. Like there's so
Right.
many songs that do what this song does, but do it to a resolution.
Yeah.
This song feels like it builds towards something, and there's just something missing.
Yeah. No, I agree. But there is an interesting thing about the lyrics that it just kind of like almost uh hints at something that comes later. They have a lyric here. It says, "In this land of make believe," which you could say is Los Angeles, "toxic February breeze, cemetery boulevards with neon signs that say you've come too far." Like this to me is like you're hinting at the song Cemetery, because I
Yeah.
think about that video that they do. And I just think it's interesting that I don't know if he like kind of went back to the song and was like, okay, there's elements that I liked here that I want to pull on to influence this other song. But I would say that's the most interesting thing about this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's gonna do it for Twisted by Design. Final thoughts, Josh.
Really surprised at how much I liked the remaster when I didn't like the Suburban one. I was real nervous going into, because I listened to both of the remasters when they were released, but it had been long enough that I didn't remember even really what my impressions were on this one. So I was a little nervous, but I was really happy pretty much right away that was all for naught, and it bangs even harder than it ever has.
On. Ben?
I think this is a very close second favorite Strung Out record, behind Suburban Teenage Wasteland Blues. It is a big step up from Suburban Teenage Wasteland Blues in terms of musicianship and production. Like the product itself is probably a better product, but I think the songs on Suburban Teenage Wasteland Blues edge this out a little bit overall. But I mean, like, two of the best Fat releases ever. So
Yeah.
kind of
I'm with you. Yeah.
You're like splitting hairs at that point,
Right.
like they're both so goddamn good.
Yeah. This is like an all-time classic for this label. And it's everything that we've already said about it, that like it's just so impressive how much variety there is to this record. I mean, different things that they're doing and they're trying, and it all works and it all feels cohesive. It's so impressive. But I think one of the most interesting things about it, though, is that a lot of the songs that were written by Jim Cherry are what the band moves towards after this.
Yeah.
And he leaves the band after this. So I just thought it was like such like a strange thing to see happen, where the person that was kind of pushing them in one direction leaves, and then there's like, no, we're gonna keep doing that. It's sort of like he almost he showed them the way. He's like,
yeah, it's like a very lasting influence.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the best.
Truly.
All right. Now, let's move on to some rival records. Some records that came out around the same time. And they are, well, as we said before, it's pretty tough to find records that sound like Strung Out.
It's true.
But we tried. I'd say that again, like, and this is actually probably the better way to approach rival records in general, is that you kind of find records that lie on either side of the extremes of what the band is. In the case of Strung Out, you don't really have much of a choice. So let's start with Bigwig's Stay Asleep. This was released on March 16th, 1999 through Kung Fu Records.
Oh, I remember Kung Fu Records.
Yeah.
God.
Dexter Holland's label.
No, that's Nitro.
Oh, duh.
Wait,
who is?
No, it's Joe Escalante's.
Yes, Vandals, right. Yeah. This this is Bigwig's second record. I think it's much better than the first one.
It was significantly better than the first one.
But I just never really connected with this record.
Really? I liked it.
A friend that loved this record to death. He listened to it all the time. He went on and on and on about how good it was, and I think every time I listened to it, I was kind of like, eh. And I still kind of feel that way about it, even though I don't think it's bad. I don't think there's nothing bad. There's nothing, poor about this record necessarily. It does even sound like something like that would have been put out on Fat.
Yeah, it really does.
It's
so. They got put out on Kung Fu because of Jim Cherry. I'm pretty sure I read.
Oh,
Oh,
really?
interesting.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting connection.
Yeah, that was somewhere. I don't know exactly where that information was, but I'm 99% sure that they did put that out on Kung Fu put it out because Jim Cherry told them.
Yeah.
Check
I
them
mean,
out or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I could believe it too because there's a reason why we picked this record to talk about it, just because like there is definitely a strung out worship happening in some of these songs, but I remembered some of it differently. Like I kind of just like I thought that it was mostly more of like in the vein of strung out, but I would say that while there's definitely some songs that lean on that, it also it just this is it's like strung out and good riddance and no effects and propaganda kind of all thrown in, and then
Yeah, it's like a big Saturday skate punk kind of vibe. Like,
yeah, and it just I think the problem that I have is that even though they're like executing really well, um it just feels so derivative, and I think that's the real problem for me.
I can
Is that
understand
it's just
that.
not landing for me. And then there's some really like odd songs that don't even feel like they belong here at all.
There's
Like
some real like immature songs that have not aged super super well.
there's that, but like I mean, in particular, there is like the song "Friends" is such like it's a straight up like Weezer influenced song. Like I'm listening to this, and
Yeah, I could see that.
I'm hearing Weezer for sure. Um,
Especially that solo in that song. It feels like a very
yeah,
Rivers Cuomo guitar solo.
yeah. Uh, and I mean the song "Freegan," which that comes up on that one ends up on short music for
Fat
Short People.
music, yeah. Or short music,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's just like a straight up swipe at propaganda. It's not even disguised in any way. It's just
No,
literally
not at all.
Yeah.
yeah.
So apparently they wanted to sound like propaganda without the politics too, is something that I read somewhere. And I feel like these guys are exactly the type of people that Less Talk More Rock. At the time this album came out, I'm hoping that they're not like this anymore. But the vibe I got from this record was they're 100% the people that Less Talk More Rock was written about, or Anti-Manifesto of like,
Sure.
we're here to rebel, sort of thing.
Right.
The Jim Cherry thing, I got mixed up. It was their first record, Unmarried Melodies on Fearless. That came about because Jim Cherry connected them with Fearless.
Nice.
Okay.
So yeah, there's the link.
Yeah. Well, still relevant.
It's funny, all those influences that they wear on their sleeve. Like they do feel like they're like not a bargain basement propaganda, but like propaganda's like dumb cousin that lives in the garage and like just has like a dirt bike he's always working on. Like that's what like Bigwig is to me. I feel like
Yeah.
he's always like, "You want a beer?" He's like, "I'm 19." So that's okay.
The singer,
Your dad's not here. It's cool.
the singer sounds a lot like Greg from the Bouncing Souls too.
Yeah, it was very
Something
similar
I'm thinking
styles.
about.
Yeah.
Another strung out connection is that I thought, based on the name and logo when I was younger, I just assumed they were a ska band.
Well, okay, so that's interesting. Because I got to the end of this record to the song 1-800-WHIPPED, and it like starts with like straight up strung out worship sounding stuff, and then all of a sudden it just transitions into ska upstrokes.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I am deducting so many points because of doing that. Like, why would you do that?
It does like stop on a dime and just goes like
It made me angry. I was like,
it's so weird.
I'm not doing this.
You can definitely tell that they come from the same state that produced Folly.
Yes, absolutely. That's only some shit like weird New Jersey dudes do.
I will say that the song Sink or Swim off of An Invitation to Tragedy is still fucking awesome.
Yeah,
but
that record
I don't like
awesome.
this record much.
Yeah, I would go back to that one and Reclamation, but
Reclamation is rough. The production
is it really
pretty
Oh
bad.
wow.
All the drums sound like a fucking somebody slapping a bag of peat moss. It's
Peat
terrible.
moss?
It's like the shittiest sounding kick drum I've ever heard. It just sounds like somebody like punching a bag of dirt.
Oh wow. Okay. Oh yeah.
The songs are rippers. Like the songs are like straight up like Slayer songs at times, but the
Okay.
production just I don't know. There's something missing there.
I remember you talking about this, and like, yeah, I guess Invitation to Tragedy is probably the one.
Yeah,
If you're gonna
if you're gonna
listen to
go with
this band.
one Bigwig record, go with the third one. Yeah.
Yeah. So did you guys find any standouts here? I think I liked one song, like enough to be like, okay, maybe I would hear that again. It's a
I
number.
thought Still's a great opener. I think that one held up for me. And I like Sell Out as much as it's kind of like a petty indictment sort of argumentative song. I still appreciate elements of it.
Yeah, Lagwagon did it better.
That's fair. And Boredom, I enjoyed. Just because it's kind of a mindless like summer. This record reminds me of like summertime and like friends skateboarding and shit. And like it's a lot of what that song conjures up. So it just kind of works for me.
Anything, Ben?
No, nothing really stood out to me. I'm sorry.
Fair. All right. Talk about one more record. And it's interesting that we're talking about this when we are, because this is a our sponsors section for Dune 2. We're going to talk about Shai Hulud. Hearts Once Nourished with Hope and Compassion. So this record, I was never really that familiar with this band. But I just, this is a tough one for me. I just don't usually listen to this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think
I assumed you would hate this.
But the thing is that I don't. I think I would rather listen to this than Bigwig. I think there's a lot to like about this record. I just get worn down by the vocals, and that's the way it's always been. But I think that it's more palatable than it ever has been. Like, I think when I was first exposed to this type of like metalcore, I was really not into it at all. And I think that over time, I've found enough bands that kind of do this sort of thing that I've kind of like coming back to this. And was like, oh, I can see a lot of things about this that are actually really cool. The lyrics in particular, I think are really interesting. But like, and I can really see how this band was a huge influence on an entire scene. Like there's, it's kind of crazy. Like you listen to this and you're just like, oh wow, this is like a real serious touch point for a lot of bands that come later.
And it's weird too, because I don't feel like they ever get fully like accredited for that either. Like for as much as like, I feel like they've got this really, because they were never quite as like technical as like Dillinger Escape Plan, but they were never as like moshy as like Throwdown. So they kind of had this weird like gray area of like metalcore that like I think people appreciated it, but never really like latched onto it.
I think that they are close to what a skate punk metalcore band would sound like.
Yeah,
especially considering like some of their probably most famous songs are covers of Bad Religion and NoFX.
Yeah,
like,
that Fearless Vampire
color. Yeah, the Bad Brains cover is great too. Yeah,
they covered Linoleum, right?
Yeah,
Linoleum and Anesthesia by Bad Religion.
That Anesthesia cover is really good. What's funny too is like you still see people discovering that NoFX cover to this day, and like that's someone's first time hearing Shai Hulud.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are guitar leads in this record that I'm just kind of like, feels kind of like NoFX guitar tone, just like, taken to a different place. A very different place. But
so I think that some of the strung out songs on Twisted by Design would not sound that out of place on this record.
Yeah.
And I also think that if you had Jason singing over some of these songs, it could feel like a strung out record too.
Yeah, I
Or it
could
could feel
totally
like a
see
strung
that.
out song. Yeah.
I think that's why I'm like a lot more on board with it than I really thought I would be. It's but it really is like, I mean, if you hadn't noticed with the ridiculous title, like it's so theatrical, like it's
Yeah, the name of this
really,
game with this band is Dramatics, like for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
The band's named after the worm from Doom. So
Right?
like
That's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
historically, this band has very much been like nerd friendly, like huge comic book nerds, huge movie nerds, huge book nerds, like well ensconced in like fantasy and storytelling for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting too that, like, you know, from the outside looking in, before you ever if you just listen to it and you don't read the lyrics, you just listen to the music, you listen to the vocals, and you look at the titles of the songs, you think to yourself, like, this is like an incredibly violent record. But then you start to read the lyrics and you're just like, actually, it's not. It's
Right.
I mean, it's so like an interesting direction to take things, where you have these songs like A Profound Hatred of Man, and then you actually read the lyrics and you're like, oh, that's actually not quite what they're doing. You think that it's just going to be pure hatred, but it's not.
Yeah, they sort of bury the lead a little bit for
Yeah.
as much of as they purport themselves to be sort of misanthropists. There's a lot of like emotion and heart to the songs.
So one of the cool things about A Profound Hatred of Man, that's definitely my favorite song on this record. That's the song.
Yeah.
That's the song that hooked me into them originally.
Yeah, for me it was For the World.
So on the next album, which doesn't come out for like 5 more years after this, the last song ends with the refrain of the opening lyrics to A Profound Hatred of Man, the If These Hands Would Only Kill. And it's cool because the song's about like pacifism, like about like ending wars and shit like that. And like it's just like this dirgy end to the album or the song in general that's just like repeating that. And it, like, I don't even know if they re-recorded it or if they just took the original recording and kind of like ran it through a bunch of effects or something. But I always think it's cool when bands do callbacks to previous
Yeah, I
albums
love
like that.
little shit like that rules.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. I'll have to check that out. Yeah, I didn't really have too many songs that I listed as standouts, but I did have A Profound Hatred of Man, and then the other one was This Wake I Myself Have Stirred.
That is a great one.
I really liked both of those songs. So, you know, I think I'd be totally cool with just like listening to those separately. I think when it's all grouped together as one album, it's the vocals, they just wear on me. It's just so much of the same type of thing. But I did find a lot to like here, so I kind of surprised myself with this one. So good
recommendation
on whichever one of you that brought this one up.
That was me.
Yeah, that was
I'm keeping this strung out metalcore train rolling.
Yeah. Well, keep it going. You know, we got a lot more strung out records to cover.
We do, yeah.
They're
maybe
literally
we'll do some. I don't even like them, but I feel like Poison the Well might be good for like the element of Sonic Defiance or something.
Yeah,
like
that wouldn't be a bad call actually.
No, that actually would be a good one, because I was reading an interview with a couple of the guys from, you know, I think it was, I don't even remember what it was from. It was probably around that time period. And they were talking about how much they love Poison the Well.
That's kind of funny.
Perfect. There we go.
So
it's another band where like the imagery and everything leads you to believe that it's going to be way like a more hateful, violent trip that you're getting, and it's going to definitely just like really sad dudes with guitars who just really like mosh parts.
Yeah. Yeah, I never was into that band either, so it would be interesting to at least go back and see if there's anything there that I could find that I could feel differently about. But
I think if you like this record, Tear from the Red, you would probably dig.
Well, the other thing you might like, their later stuff, I've heard people say, I don't know how true this is, has like more of like a quicksand or even like a shoegaze
Oh,
vibe to it.
really? Okay.
So I mean, I don't know how true. I don't know how true that is, but people have said it.
Okay,
So
well, I'll check that
yeah.
out. I'm speaking my language. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot more opportunities to talk about that type of thing in relation to Strung Out. I think if we can try to work in something about Dillinger Escape Plan, because
that would be fun.
Man, they got some wild stuff in there, that's for sure. But and Strung Out is as we record this, Strung Out is about to release a new record. And I have to say I'm just out at this point. But I respect.
Yeah, I've been out for a bit.
Yeah, I respect that they're still going, that they're still doing their thing. But at this point, they've come so far from this record that I'm just not into it anymore. But good on them. They're still going. It's impressive after all this time to keep going and still changing and still pushing what you can do.
I'm gonna try to see them. I'm trying to find the date here on that tour that they're doing with Less Than Jake.
Oh shit! I didn't realize that was a thing.
What a pairing!
It is a pairing, yeah.
Wow, jeez.
It goes to my. So yeah, at the end of this month, well, end of next month technically, but pretty much the end of this month, March 28th, they're playing here. So
that's cool.
Yeah, if that's where I'll check out the new album. Is if I like what they play live, I might listen to more of it. But
yeah, I listened to the 2 singles they've released, and then both times I was like, "This ain't it for me." But it's all good.
Sorry, Fat Mike, for panning one of your new releases, but it is what it is.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. If you have any questions, comments, or corrections on anything that we've gotten wrong, please email us at ontherecord@gmail.com so we can set the record straight in a future episode. We'll be back next week to talk about Snuff's Tweet My Lovely. Thanks
More
for
Snuff.
listening. See ya.